Okay, so you've watched the pre-release reviews but you've stuck to your guns. No pre-orders till it's in customers' hands and the reviews are in. Well, I've got mine now and I had enough time to chew on it. I'll try to put into words what you're in for if you replace your Logitech G Series wheel, Fanatec CSL Elite or Clubsport wheelbase with a CSL DD. As with some of my previous videos, I'll sum it up first to save you the wait and then expand on it. We're not here for the mid-roll ads, are we? All I humbly ask is that if you find this helpful and you head to buy one based on the points I cover, use the affiliate link in the description so that Fanatec knows I sent you. And thank you very much to everyone who's done so in the past. Here's a summary of what you'll probably want to know, all of which will be covered throughout. If you're coming from a Logitech wheel, then you will be in for a treat, as it's a massive step up and well worth it. If you enjoy your sim racing, then you will be delighted from the very first lap. If you're coming from a CSL Elite or CSW, then results depend on the title. For ACC, it's made a big difference. For iRacing, it's an improvement, but you won't be majorly missing out if you stick with your current kit. Yes, it's very quiet in operation. Yep, it runs cool, despite having no active fans. Yes, it's still desk friendly if you don't have a rig yet. So I received my CSL DD in August this year, quite a surprise because it's a little bit ahead of schedule, but even so, I think I got my pre-order in before they'd even spell check the product page, so I ended up amongst the first wave of public customers to receive them. The model that I'm referring to throughout this overview is the Boost Kit bundle. I'm not taking the cheaper, non-boosted version into consideration. Before now, I had never experienced a direct drive wheelbase of any kind. Never touched a DD1 or a DD2, SimiCube, none of them. In this respect, my journey is much the same as many of yours would be. I used a Logitech G29 for a long time, stepped up to a Fanatec CSL Elite, which was a huge improvement, and ran that for about 18 months up to now, until replacing that with a brand new Fanatec CSL DD. I will likely never buy or even sample a premium direct drive base, so this has the job of impressing me to a level whereby I'd be happy with this forevermore and don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. With my old CSL Elite, I was a very happy customer, yeah, but I knew that I would inevitably upgrade at some point. The CSL DD has stepped forth and so far leaves me feeling satisfied with almost everything about it and wanting nothing more, at least for the foreseeable future. I would say that for any home sim racer there's not much else you could need from a wheelbase. I can't see myself being compelled to upgrade from this for years to come. So, to those of you with Logitech wheels, from the G25, G29 through to the most recent G923, it doesn't really matter which Logitech wheel you're on. They've remained virtually the same product throughout the years, so if your wheel has the Logitech logo, then I'm talking to you. The verdict is really straightforward for you guys. Upgrading to a CSL DD means a fundamental rewrite of everything that you thought force feedback wheels can do. And although that sounds a little bit dramatic, it really is that big of a difference between what you have and what you're going to be going up to. This was my experience coming to Fanatec from Logitech last year with the CSL Elite, and that ranks as one of the top things I've ever bought in terms of the effect it had on my enjoyment of something. There's no doubt in my mind that the satisfaction of the customers that make the jump from Logitech to Fanatec is virtually 100%. The renewed joy of sim racing I felt after making the move to the CSL Elite last year is literally the reason this YouTube channel exists now. That's not even a joke. But the biggest barrier that stands in front of Logitech users is mainly the cost difference. Logitech wheels are already an expensive peripheral when you're quite new to sim racing. So wrapping your head around how good something's going to be that's 2, 3 or 4 times the cost is really difficult, because so often in this world, things that cost twice as much rarely turn out to be twice as good. This is one of those rare cases where it actually does. It's not a yeah cool upgrade. It's a oh good lord wow upgrade. Everything suddenly feels like it's got actual mass, with actual tyres contacting the actual ground, and you'll start to enjoy every single minute of racing with the non-stop texture and interaction with the wheel that you'll feel now. The vastly improved ability to detect and react to a developing spin naturally is a real thing. Being fast with a Logitech wheel is a skill that you have to acquire through a lot of practice and brain calibration. Whereas with the CSL DD, you'll pick it up much more quickly due to the natural conversation between the sim and the muscles in your arms and shoulders. Karting is a simple activity to pick up because you can feel everything through the wheel, and the same natural absorption can happen with sim racing if you have the right controls. I remember having to concentrate quite hard to go to a full race distance with a Logitech. Any lapse in focus and I'd miss a subtle piece of force feedback or a visual cue and get into trouble, whereas now it's much clearer where the limit starts and ends. Much like your Logitech wheel, the CSL DD is desk friendly with an optional desk clamp you can buy. You won't get the best results with a desk setup in the same way that you won't get the best results if you put your Chicago Town pizza in the microwave rather than the oven, but it's still made with it in mind and it gets you by perfectly well. My mate Dean uses his on his home desk with a Clubsport table clamp no less, no cockpit or rig involved. He seems to manage pretty well. If your desk is rickety then you may still be in a bit of trouble, but the fact that you can mount it on a desk is good news for those of you who are getting the wheel before the cockpit, and that's what I did too initially before getting a cockpit. A dedicated rig is a big space commitment, so knowing that the CSL DD is not off limits for desk people is good to know. But don't be fooled, you'll eventually want a cockpit if you're setting yourself down this route. It'll be a matter of when, not if, because, cockpits are totally sweet, man. One quality of life improvement that you will experience going over to a CSL DD is far less noise. In the initial summary I mentioned that it's practically silent. If you've got a Logitech wheel, you know that it makes a pretty loud noise when you're properly wheeling and dealing, and if you live with other people, that noise can be a problem sometimes, even if they don't say it. The CSL DD eliminates noise from the equation with pretty much silent operation and no active cooling. There's very little noise emanating from this thing. The passive cooling element raised the question before as to how cool is it going to run, and I'm happy to report that it's basically room temperature to touch all the way through, even after a long session in ACC, which always used to get my CSL Elite turning the fans up all the way. However they've done it, it's accomplished the task completely. I can't pick fault here. There's really no quieter wheelbase out there that I know of. I place a high degree of importance on not disturbing the peace of others, and I always find it easier to enjoy things when it's not causing any offence to those around me. And if you do too, then the relative silence of a CSL DD is going to be a great relief from the whirring and whining of your Logitech wheel. Something important to bear in mind if you're not too familiar with the way they work is that all Fanatec equipment setups require 3 components: the wheelbase, the steering wheel and the pedals. The CSL DD is just the wheelbase. If you're buying one to replace your Logitech, then you'll need a Fanatec steering wheel and pedals too. You won't be able to bring your Logitech steering wheel, pedals or shifter with you on your new Fanatec base. If you want to know what I have, it's the McLaren V2 wheel and Clubsport V3 pedals, which are great when mounted to a cockpit like they're designed to do, but if you're freestanding these pedals on the floor like I did initially, then they require a little bit of DIY to make them work well. Even so, that is how I used them for a while, and making them floor friendly isn't too hard. A video on that is linked in the description. With my Clubsport V3s, I have the optional damper kit and brake performance kit too. I've done a video on whether you need these added extras, which is also in the description. There are cheaper pedals available from Fanatec, but the Clubsport pedals have always been their flagship pedals up to now. To sum it up for Logitech users, yes, it's an expensive leap to make, but at least it is a true leap for once, and one which virtually nobody has ever reversed, at least not to my knowledge. It's annoying when you upgrade an element of your equipment and are kinda left feeling like the difference is kinda unremarkable and you basically just paid for a better brand name on the side of it, but that's not the case in this instance. Every Logitech to Fanatec convert has remarked in much the same way that sim racing suddenly becomes so much more interesting and exciting with the much stronger feedback experience you're getting. However, with the CSL DD sure to chip some older Fanatec gear loose onto the second-hand market, it's worth keeping an eye out for CSL Elites or Clubsport wheelbases too, as they are still game changers for Logitech. Just don't expect a bargain, as they tend to hold their value really well. Any viewers that have made the move from Logitech to Fanatec, share your experiences in the comments section to help anyone follow in your footsteps. I know this helps folks to no end, and thanks for taking the time to share your side. So if you already have a CSL Elite or CSW, then is it a big upgrade or even an upgrade at all? It's a good question because the CSL DD is priced almost identically to what the old belt drive wheels were, and rated to similar torque values too, making it hard to see on paper what the benefit is, and trying to describe what direct drive actually feels like is like trying to pull Excalibur from a stone. Many will try and fail. Both myself and a close pal now have the CSL DD with boost kit, but the difference between us is that before this I had the CSL Elite, he had a Clubsport wheelbase. We both mainly play iRacing and we both agree that the DD is a distinct improvement in numerous ways, but it's not mind-blowing. It's a better product that replaces the old lineup for the same price, so in that respect it's definitely a step forward, and if you're entering the Fanatec club now, then you're getting a better wheel than you would have done before its release. But if you're an iRacer and they've already got a belt drive CSL or CSW, then this new base doesn't unlock anything significant that would make it a must-have, at least not for iRacing. ACC is another matter though, and I'll get to that soon. In iRacing, the force feedback you receive will now feel spotlessly clean, unhindered, and exactly as they intended to be delivered to you, and the sheer smoothness of the mechanism in this makes it feel much more premium, especially from the CSL Elite, which used a toothed belt, which you could subtly tell was there. But the general experience and flavour of the feedback that you get from iRacing is still the same underneath it all. In other words, the CSL DD is basically the Blu-ray version of the CSL Elite and CSW. You won't be seeing any new major plot points, but the extra quality is very welcome. Since using it, I do find that my steering inputs are that little bit more frantic now, because there's no mechanical resistance or natural damping anymore. It's a lovely, crisp, one-to-one conversation between me and the sim. So when I say more frantic, that's not meant as a detraction. I mean it in the sense that I'm correcting things that I seemingly wasn't aware needed correcting before, and I think it's helping a tiny bit with consistency and confidence. I can imagine that this will help me avoid that one spin out of 10, that extra tenth here or there, and depending on who you ask, that's either small beans or worth its weight in gold. If you mainly play Assetto Corsa Competizione, however, to me the game seemed to come alive with the CSL DD. I made the mistake of trying ACC first when I initially gave this wheel a test spin, and I found it to be a totally new experience. Every single thing was so much crisper, all the little track elements like curbs and rumble strips were transmitted so clearly and sharply that I was truly immersed in a GT car for a time. Given ACC gets some stick for dull force feedback at times, I think the CSL DD is going to actually change this perception when it's in more people's hands, as there seems to be a lot more that the game can convey to you through direct drive wheelbases than it can through belt wheels. And I understand why. Electricity is a heck of a lot faster than a rubber drive belt, but boy, what a difference. You can feel every single ripple in the track features, subtle rumbles through the wheel when the ABS engages, even the descending chatter and chirp of the tyres when you spin and slide to a halt. It's just a really filled out sensation, and one that's a lot more immersive than it ever was through my CSL Elite. For ACC, this wheel takes a big step towards really believing that you're driving something, and I came away from the initial session thinking, wow, if ACC is that much better, what's it going to do in iRacing where I spend most of my time? Well, the answer, as you heard, was not quite as dramatic, but, you know, really good stuff in ACC. But here's the big one though. There's one question that I'm certain is on everyone's mind, and I have the answer. Yes, you can crack open a cold one on the CSL DD. Attention, this is a joke. The bottle is empty, the cap is loose. There's no risk to me or my CSL DD. Do not do this at home. Do not do this at home, idiots. The CSL DD has one kind of unintended consequence which might cause issues for some cockpits, particularly those with limited ranges of pitch, meaning how many degrees you can tilt the wheel. The CSL DD has got a 0-degree mounting plane, whereas previous low to mid-tier wheels have had a built-in pitch angle of maybe 10 degrees or so, and lots of cockpits are designed with this general accommodation in mind. My previous cockpit, before this brand new GT Omega Prime you've seen throughout this video, was the GT Omega ART. The ART has got a limited range of pitch on the wheel deck, and I had to adjust mine as far up as it could go, and I could still have benefited from a few degrees more. There's no doubt an easy fix someone will come up with for the cockpits that have this limitation, but it's something to consider. If you don't have a really wide range of pitch adjustment on your cockpit, be prepared in case it doesn't quite allow you to point the CSL DD up as far as you'd like. In closing, the CSL DD does improve noticeably upon the CSL Elite and CSW previously from Fanatec. They themselves were a huge step up for Logitech racers, making the CSL DD a bigger jump still, if that applies to you. If you're an iRacer, you'll appreciate the extra agility, but it's not a whole new experience, just improved. If you're an ACC racer, then you definitely will appreciate the CSL DD fully. It seems to utilise it really well, and really impressed me how much more immersive and textured everything is. Feeding perfectly into the Fanatec conspiracy theories surrounding ACC. I'm sure you've heard them. I can kind of see the point, because ACC really is best enjoyed with a direct drive, it seems. Overall though, this wheelbase generally does feel next gen in terms of design and price point, and I can see why Fanatec are quite proud of the package as a whole. Back when news of it first broke, I saw it as a direct replacement for the CSL Elite and CSW line, and it has definitely filled those boots perfectly, bringing many welcome benefits along with it. I think Fanatec knew full well that bringing a pint-sized direct drive wheel at this cost was equivalent to going over and kicking the competition's sandcastles. They're so smug about it as well, it's hilarious. It'll be cool to see what comes out in response to it. Hell, this might even force Logitech to do something new, and wouldn't that be something? I do love you, Logitech, but there are kids that have been born and raised that are now playing on a wheel design that's older than they are. The CSL DD is a solid successor to the well-loved CSL Elite and CSW, and is a very attractive landing pad for incoming Logitech users, and a less seismic but still welcome step up for existing Fanatec people. And that's all I've got to say for now. Remember to check the descriptions for notable links referenced in the video. Please subscribe if you found this helpful in any way, and feel free to comment with questions or your own experience of the CSL DD if you've got yours. Most people watching this are keen to hear your views as fellow customers, and thanks for taking the time to do so. Cheers.